what is your favorite console or computer to play games on? Whether you're playing, emulated games, obviously, right now, on it or not.
That's another one that's almost impossible to answer, but anything's fine, really. Macaw's fine.
Mikhail, is that how your parents call you?
Oh, it was French, French name, but not French though.
Yeah, that's kind of like what up, because I'm French Canadian, so and I saw your name was Michel, which is a very French name, and so are your parents French at all?
No.
They just
they just named it that for some reason. I don't know, but the actual macaw is just the bird, the parrot. So
right, because that was my next question. Really, is Macaw45? To me, it sounds like a username that was created before someone started doing content creation, but I may be wrong. Can you tell me what?
It definitely was.
Yeah.
Just I like the parrot, macaw, the macaws, and 45 was just to have some distinction because macaw was usually always taken everywhere. So it is Macaw45 years and years before I was streaming or anything. So yeah.
Why 45?
Random. I don't know.
Okay. It's not like some special number for
doesn't
you.
Doesn't mean anything. No.
Well, you gotta love it though, because just sticking with that name, you are one of the most, frankly, if not the most popular retro streamer right now, or you have been for a while. And well, I can tell you, we look at numbers, and I can tell you you're quite popular, and you have over 20,000 followers. You have a lot of channel views, but you have around 600, 700, 800 average viewers when you stream. And for Twitch, as a whole, it's not huge, right? Because you see other streamers having tens of thousands of but for the retro category, you're sitting at the top, because except if there's like a special event or something like that happening, but you're really one of the most popular, most recognized person as well. We've interviewed a lot of retro creators in the past, and here at Streamforge Radio, and maybe because I'm such a retro guy, I'm sure you noticed my collection in the back, and so, but they all know you, of course, and they all respect you very deeply. Like, do you know why you're so popular?
Considering some of the stuff I stream, I have no idea. I stream a lot of weird, obscure stuff. I don't know. I guess I'm just been doing it for a while now, and I'm passionate about the games. That's really all it comes down to, maybe.
I mean, you do have a nice, deep voice. I think that's kind of like a soothing voice.
Sometimes a very annoying voice when I'm getting mad at an impossible game.
Possible. Nice accent too. So, I mean, it's important though, because ultimately all these guys watching you, well, they're not all watching you. Some of them, I'm sure they're listening to you as well, because they might be doing something, other things at the same time. So, and, but I think there's something about you that makes people come to your stream, for sure, obviously. Recently you've been playing, I saw a recent stream where you started playing Turok, right? Like, tell me more about this.
I often like to do sort of like a series of streams where I'm playing through the whole set of games in a certain theme or series or something like that. In regards to the Turok thing, I wanted to play all the 2D Turok games, which is all the Game Boy ones, all the 2D side scrollers and stuff. I didn't want to play the 3D ones. Not that I have anything against them. I kind of do want to play them, but just all the 2D ones, which was 6 that I found. It's 4 on Game Boy, 1 on Game Boy Advance, and 1 mobile phone one. Just finished that today. Like a week ago, I did all the Waterworld games based on the movie Waterworld.
Wait. All the games? There's many games?
Yeah, there was, how many was, I think there was five
What?
Waterworld games, yeah.
Oh my
And there was
god.
2 unrelleased that we had
Wow.
to look at as well. Yeah.
How do you get to play these unreleased games though?
Oh, well, one of them, the Sega Genesis one, is dumped on the internet. It was leaked somehow or something like that, so you can play that one. There was another one that was coming out on the PS1 and 3DO, but that's unfortunately not available. You can't play that. There was another one on the Saturn that didn't get released. There's screenshots of it, but yeah, I think there was just 5 that I was able to play.
But still, that's a lot of Waterworld games.
It's a lot of Kevin Costner's Waterworld right there. But it's always fascinating to me doing these kind of series where you focus on one thing and play all the games in a certain theme. I've done all the 2D Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games before. I've done all the Power Rangers stuff. I've just done stuff like that. I think those are a lot of fun.
Well, it's fun to go outside of like what you typically see on the retro genres. Maybe that's, I mean, one of the many reasons people come and watch a stream in masses, because the retro category has a lot of speedrunners playing sometimes different games, but a lot of the times as well, like they're gonna play Mario 64 or other types of games that are like just popular speed ran games, I guess I could say. Going to find more obscure games and maybe like have a theme week or something. If you you're gonna play like these 6 turok games over like a course of however long it takes, I'm sure is more unique. I wouldn't say is completely unique. I do see like more like obscure streamers. I think Dino is one that you may be familiar with. We had him on the show a few months back now. Love Dino stuff as well. But it's really fun to discover these games that frankly, like I'm a retro collector. I've been collecting for 8 years plus probably by now. Time flies. And I have a big collection. I have over 2,000 games in my collection. I've done a lot of research and all this, but it's still, I stumbled across your stream. I'm like, wait, there was like a turok game released in 1999
there's
on
always
Game Boy.
new, isn't there?
Yeah, it's like it's crazy the amounts of games, like, and just like the Waterworld, knowing like I didn't even know there was one Waterworld game. Now there's 5 playable.
Things get even crazier when you start looking at old computer games. It just becomes endless. Old PC, like there's so many computers from the 80s, and the libraries of games on there is just, it's chaotic. There's so much stuff.
How do you find these games? Like, how do you find these games and also decide like what are you gonna play next?
It's basically entirely dictated by what I'm interested in. I can't get passionate or excited about playing something or wanting to play something unless it really interests me. And it's always fun for me. It always has been to explore all kinds of systems, handhelds, consoles, computers. And I just start going crazy. Ever since I was very young, I always would go find a list of games on a system and just go through the whole thing and see what was cool, because I was so fascinated at finding everything that was cool on that was available to play. Whether you could play it through emulation or I had to find ways to buy it because games weren't dumped, it wasn't available. So like tons of handhelds I had to buy them physically, or tons of other PC games. Whatever it is, I just find a way to play the games that I want to play and I play them. And that often means just spending hours and hours looking through a list of old games. When it comes to like the common consoles, like the Super Nintendo, the NES, Genesis, or any of this type of stuff, it's pretty simple and there's a lot of information out there. But when it comes to the old computers, Japanese computers, other foreign language games, I'm always looking at games with different languages. You have to use more niche sources, and it becomes quite interesting. So everything, I'm kind of just into that whole thing, really. And whenever you find something really exciting, it's always a good payoff.
I mean, you got to be passionate. I think, you're right. I mean, putting all that energy and effort into it can't be. It has to come naturally, I think, right?
Yeah.
Talking about like foreign language stuff, and you have a shelf or
Oh
a
yeah.
bookshelf or in the
So-
background. What is this? I see like some Japanese, or what is this?
Yeah, there's this row here is just Japanese Windows 95 era games.
Wow.
Up here we have this is Taiwanese stuff there and there. I think that's all Taiwanese. Taiwan is a country which I'm particularly fond of the video games from there. They were they did a whole bunch of DOS stuff. They started in the DOS era and went through the Windows eras and stuff. Up until maybe about 2005, 2006, which is that weird era when a lot of people stopped making single-player PC games because MMOs were taken over at that time. But in that era, they made a ton of games, and there's a ton in this cupboard, and yeah, I've just got stuff everywhere.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
My German DOS games down the bottom here.
So mainly PC games.
A lot of this is PC games. I got console games, but they're like in a whole different area.
Mm-hmm. How many games you got in your collection?
Oh, I've never counted.
Really?
Counted. There'd be at least in the thousands, I guess. All the little things everywhere would add up quite a bit.
Yeah, you're not
Thousands,
using
maybe.
like price charting to like have your
A lot
collection
of the
there?
stuff I would have no idea what the price is. This is like a lot of weird stuff that I get through lots of different sites or whatever.
Yeah.
Outside the common like Super Nintendo and the Nintendo consoles, the Sega consoles, and that stuff is you get the prices pretty easily. But when it comes to the PC games, it's a little bit weirder. I feel.
No, absolutely. Like a 1992 Taiwanese DOS game, I'm
Yeah.
not sure it's on price charting. You're right.
Yeah. A lot of these on the Taiwanese auction sites, a lot of them they're all like new dead stock. They're all sealed. Like there's no collectors in
Really?
Taiwan for a lot of
Yeah.
them. So some Australian guy buying them. They don't know why.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't know it was like even a scene of like Taiwanese PC games. That's
the same with Korea. Korea had their whole scene with DOS Korean games, which is a whole nother thing as well. And it's pretty crazy.
Do you have means to play these old PC games, or do you just emulate them?
The ones that you can always just find them. A lot of the Taiwanese ones, just like a lot of the other DOS games, have already been, they're already available on the internet. For certain games that maybe they don't have a good rip on the internet or anything, I just get the floppy disks, put them through a USB floppy drive, and get the data off of myself. So you can just do that, and then you run it in an emulator.
You can just do that. Simple as that.
Yeah. Providing you can read the floppy disk and the floppy disk isn't
Right.
rotted or whatever. But
Right, but you can simply take a floppy disk, put it in the floppy disk reader, extract that information, put it into an emulator straight up, and it works.
you could. A lot of these games, if they come on like a 3-inch floppy disk, 3.5-inch, you could just rip the data straight off it, put it all together, throw it in a DOS box, and just cross your fingers. And a lot of the time, it works. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know it could be that simple.
It gets a lot trickier for the older games that come on the 5-inch floppy disks. Especially a lot of this is all DOS, but if you're not working with DOS and you're working with the old Japanese PCs and stuff, then it gets a lot trickier because those games boot from the floppy disk, and you just have to be very careful with replicating the disk image.
Yeah, I can imagine. Playing an emulated, like, you're talking about games that were played on basically black screens, with the green text and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be pretty wild to play this in 2022. I don't think I've ever played any of these games. I was too young at the time. I remember my parents having a computer like this, but I mostly started playing PC games in like with Windows 95. I think it was mainly
it's similar for me as well. A lot of this stuff is like early 90s or the DOS games early 90s. I didn't really play them too much as a kid, but definitely by the time Windows era came around, I was a kid. The Windows 95 era, I never had Windows 3.1, but after Windows 3.1, you got Windows 95, and that's where I started buying like Heroes of Might and Magic 2 and stuff like that, and I really got into it back as a kid with the PC games. But even as a kid, I had this Super Nintendo, and I was playing that as well. I was just subjected to a lot of that stuff. It wasn't until I was an adult though that I went back and got crazy with this nonsense though.
Like that's my next question is, what do you find in old games that you can't find in newer games? Like, why are you sticking to old games?
Well, firstly, I don't exclusively stick to old games. Definitely any cool 2D game coming out, or it doesn't even have to be 2D, FPSs or whatever. I'm always interested in new games. So always got my eye on new games. It's just as exciting as old games. The only thing is that the old games, I guess, especially talking foreign language, things are a lot more globalized now. So Steam and everything's like all, you got the information out there. A lot of these old games, they were only released in like one region, and there's often a lot of cultural significance or like distinction because of that, in addition to just the fact that back then games design was very different, for better or for worse. For worse in a lot of cases, but there's just so much stuff to explore. I wouldn't even know where to start. Like if you get into the old German DOS games, which started coming out after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and they're all about like economic simulation and like all this entrepreneurial training, work ethic training, all those German games, and that stuff I'm fully into, like business sims.
That's really funny.
But then a lot of the Taiwanese stuff here is kind of a weird cross-section between like Japanese games and American games. So you have like these RPGs that are like a cross between very American stuff like the Ultima series and very Japanese stuff like Final Fantasy, and you get these weird, it's just very interesting. It's endlessly fascinating and fun to play a lot of this stuff to me.
Yeah, the discovery, I think, is because it's so much part of that, your process, if you will. It's just, you don't get it with new games. I understand that. No, and we've done, a few campaigns together as well with TMNT recently, right?
Yeah.
Have a Nice Death, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously,
and
like,
those
these
games are brilliant. Those are, I have just as much respect for new stuff as some old stuff, at least.
But it's still kind of new for you though, right? Because looking back at your timeline, your last year or two, I mean, you mostly play retro. You're opening up to playing more. And I think we've done Streets of Rage as well last year, or a couple of years now.
Windjammers as well.
Windjammers, yeah, we've done plenty of things together. But these are very retro-esque.
Yeah, they're inspired by the games.
Yeah, of course. What are some of the like more modern games that maybe you haven't played on stream, but that you are interested in?
I haven't played any of them yet, but all the stuff from the modern From Software, Dark Souls onwards, I've watched countless hours of people playing those games. Those games are incredible. Everything about them, the Dark Souls style game where you're just running around, there's constant boss fights, crazy monsters, you fight them, and you move on, very simple and streamlined and fun and interesting visually and all this stuff. Like, I would be fully into those games, and I'm probably going to stream them eventually. My computer, I need an update, but I'll definitely, those games, I know that I would have a ton of fun with.
Some of them are becoming retro anyways.
Right? In time, yeah. In time. That's the whole thing, like what classifies as retro, because there's a weird sort of time thing going on where in the 80s to say like 1999, there's a massive difference in what games look like. But now you look at something from 10 years ago to now and there's very little difference. There's like slowing down, but yeah, it's like, would Doom 3 from 2004 or so be retro now? Because people see that and it looks like a 3D thing, but it's so old when you think about it. And
well, it is. And I mean, where do you stop? Like, when does a game become retro for you?
I don't even know if I can answer that question, because a lot of the time I don't even think of it in terms of retro. I just think of it in terms of it's a game that exists and I want to play it.
Yeah.
So even in terms of retro, like it's so broad, because retro could mean like late 70s, like Atari, or it could mean like 1994, like some Super Nintendo game, or Final Fantasy 7 from like 97, 98, whenever that was from. So
The Dreamcast is retro, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
the
3D.
Dreamcast,
A lot
that
of
was
them.
around 2000, wasn't it? Yeah, 2000, 1999. So yeah, it's just feel like it's such a broad thing that it doesn't really mean much unless you really say exactly. I don't know. It's very broad.
It is. It's very vague, yeah, because you can say like next gen, current gen, past gen,
because a
but
lot of
like
people might look at Xbox or PlayStation 3 as being retro, and
well, it's 2 generations back, you know.
two
To me,
generations back.
yeah, like to me, it's all for me. It's almost. I think it can qualify as retro. You know, 2 generations back. That means Xbox 360. That means what? The Wii, right? Like the Wii is for me. The Wii is retro. I'm sorry, the Wii is retro. Like that generation just became retro.
Yeah.
Xbox 360, Wii, Xbox PS3.
I think it's a very subjective thing with what people have as an idea of an old game in their head. Some people maybe it just has to be like 16-bit Super Nintendo-esque graphics and lower. Some people, if it's like PS2 onwards, they can't accept it as retro because it's like sort of modern 3D third-person action games and all that sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, but like say in 20 years, say these guys like they don't agree that because it's a 3D model. Like in 20 years, the game will be, 30, 30 years old, or like then is that retro now?
Yeah.
Because like I feel like it's maybe like the mentality that because when they got into retro gaming, the retro games were the 2D stuff, the pixel art, like 8-bit 16-bit 8-bit stuff, maybe 64 bits, whatever, but it's evolving, it's moving. Time keeps on going,
always, and there's more games coming out now than ever before.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. So Elden Ring would be, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You say, yeah. Would you like to play this?
When that came out, like, if I had a better computer, I would have streamed it. But my computer is getting on now. I need to replace it. But I watched people play that a lot. Have just as much interest in something like that as all the other Dark Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne, all that From Software stuff looks like a ton of fun. So I know I like those.
How do you feel your audience would react to you playing Elden Ring? Which would be, like we're going back to like, people thinking of retro as like 8-bit, 16-bit, all that. You played some more like 2D kind of, beat 'em up or, type of deal, which did really well for your channel. But going to like Elden Ring, straight up Elden Ring, how do you feel your audience would react to that?
Oh, it's hard to tell. I think because that's the sort of thing where if you're known for one very specific thing that's maybe specific games or whatever, and then you maybe switch it up, a lot of your viewers might not watch. But because I'm so varied with super old games, just old games, not so old games, like I feel like I've done so much variety that people would actually be somewhat interested, at least some people would be somewhat interested in watching me play like super new stuff like that, new blockbusters coming out. And the chat would probably be nothing but memes, but
yeah,
I think it'd be fun. I think some people would get a kick out of it for sure.
I mean, as a passionate guy, I think you seem passionate about the idea of playing From Software games. So I think at the very least, they're going to get a passionate Macaw45 on stream playing these games, right?
Yeah, I would love it.
Yeah, it won't be much different, I think, than what they find typically in your streams.
Yeah.
So you're talking about PC, you don't have like current gen consoles?
I don't have current gen at the moment, no. I've got like a PS3 and stuff like that, but I haven't used those in a while. So yeah, I've definitely fallen behind with that, but maybe the time will come where I get something like that. It all depends. All depends on my mood, how I feel.
You can play old games now on PlayStation with their new PlayStation Plus.
Yeah.
The premium stuff. You have PSP games, PS1, PS2. You got a PS3 as well.
It's crazy.
Yeah, old stuff. That's pretty fun. And I think like the Xbox as well, they've done a tremendous job. Like I collect some, well, those two like old PlayStation and Xbox games, but like Xbox started like the ball with not just like allowing you to put in your old original Xbox games or Xbox 360 games in your console and play them, but also like they basically remastered them or like increase the definition of these games as well, which is pretty awesome, you know. So like I have an Xbox, original Xbox. I have Xbox 360, but when I can, I just put it in my Xbox Series X and it plays very nicely on it. So that's a lot of fun how these old games are basically like backwards compatible now with previous or with current generation. And it looks like companies like Xbox, PlayStation, and even Nintendo with their online service, right, are embracing their legacy and the previous games that were done on their original consoles, if you will.
Yeah,
so
I think that's definitely a tremendous boon to have something like that. You don't have to keep your old hardware is such an annoyance to keep around. That's why emulation is so powerful. Regardless of if I own however many physical games like this, a lot of the time the physical game is just so that you can have the full experience, at least with old games. Not really a thing with many new games these days, but with the old games, you got the manual, the big thick manuals for the old RPGs and all that type of thing, but you still end up playing them on emulator, because otherwise I would have 10 computers in this room and there's no space and you just can't handle that. The same with the console. So the fact that it's playable on a lot of that stuff, the companies are seeing the value in doing that. That's really, really cool and exciting.
Yeah, it really is. And hopefully they keep on moving in that direction, because we've seen it before how some companies would be like backwards compatible one generation, then not the next, and going back. But I think because of what Xbox started by embracing again their original Xbox games and all this, they just created a huge library of games that were backwards compatible, and not just backwards compatible, but even upgraded in terms of like resolution. It just opened the door to the whole industry, I think, to embrace that side of it. And you still have the pleasure of taking that old case, taking the the disc and putting it in, and not just, so you're not playing a digital game. It may be digitalized because it's like increased resolution and all that, but it's still your disc, it's still something from your collection. So that's a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
If you had to pick one, current gen, PlayStation, Xbox, maybe even Switch, we can put it in the mix. Which one would it be?
That's a hard question. That's a hard question because I haven't done the best job of seeing what's on each system. All that I know is that, I know the Demon Souls, the remake, is on the PlayStation. Just for the sake of, I'd probably, see, this is such a hard question because I am actually interested in like the Nintendo IP stuff that they have that's always exclusive to their stuff as well. So it's such a difficult question. I would have to probably just go with something like the PlayStation, just for the sake of having being able to get the broadest depth of everything that I might want to play on something like that, even though there's often little difference with Microsoft these days, with Microsoft and Sony, but yeah.
There are, like games like The Last of Us, for example, a game that I love, only available, like Horizon, the franchise Horizon. There's a few things, and I think From Software, even Final Fantasy, there's like some games back then that maybe were only available on PlayStation. But I'll tell you one thing. My suggestion to you, my advice, I should say, to you, don't start with Demon Souls, because it's the hardest game I've ever played in my life. It's so crazy, man. Like I loved Elden Ring. I have all the other From Software games. I had never played Demon Souls, and I was like, hey, looks nice. The graphics are really nice.
You just got destroyed.
But oh my god, man. there's no checkpoints.
No
You literally
checkpoints.
have to go. There's no checkpoint. You starting the level, and you have to go through it without dying, because if you die, you start from the very beginning.
That sounds like an old school.
It is very
game.
old school, yeah, of course. But it's like it's really, really, really difficult. It just requires a lot. I'm sure you have that patience. I don't. You know, I didn't have that patience to just. I mean, I spent several hours trying to beat the first level, to be honest, and I just couldn't. So I was like, I got discouraged. Not gonna lie.
The one I definitely want to play first is Dark Souls, just the original Dark Souls, or remastered, or whatever you can get on on Steam these days. When it comes to From Software stuff, and then from there I have no idea, but it's definitely going to happen one of these days. I can feel it.
Well, we can certainly feel the interest and the passion about these games. So hopefully we get to see you play them eventually. And so you spend a lot of time on Twitch, of course. Do you do anything on other social platforms like YouTube, TikTok, anything like this?
No TikTok. Just a few silly pictures on Instagram. YouTube is something that I definitely want to make videos for in the future. Like, I don't want to just take my streams and put them on YouTube. I want to do proper YouTube videos where you're actually speaking directly to the viewer, the proper YouTube content. And I've thought about this for years, and it just hasn't happened yet. I do have a few YouTube videos. Like, I made silly Sony press conference in 1 minute video, like back at the start of YouTube coming out, like who knows how many years ago, over 10 years ago, and that got like 1 million views. But then I never made any other videos. So I want to make, I think it would be a good idea to get some of the more obscure stuff that I have, or stuff that's rather interesting for whatever reason, and directly make a video about it where I talk about it, do some slight editing or whatever. And yeah, that's just been a pipe dream for quite a while. Hopefully one of these days it can become a reality. So yeah, that's definitely a thing.
Did you see yourself on YouTube as like the video game historian, something like this?
Yeah,
like
it'd be something like that. Just trying to pick up very particular, interesting topics and talk about them, because it's stuff that maybe I don't see anyone else talking about. No one else really ever investigates this type of thing or talks about these games. So definitely that's the type of video I'd want to make in the future. And
again, like, not to put words in your mouth, but you know, it's also something you seem passionate about. So very I think much, again, it's like that again. Can that passion can you know, reach people in their homes or through their phones, you know, as they're watching your videos, you know, just same as on Twitch when you're playing them.
It's live. Very rewarding just having people enjoy stuff that I thought that no one would be interested in, but some people, you'd be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you speak any like other languages? Because like you're talking about like Taiwanese games, Japanese games, German games. Like, can you read what's happening in these games?
Terribly. I just know, like, I know just knowledge in all these languages to get me through, and as much as I need to learn. So I probably know the most Japanese. I did Japanese back when I was in primary school, and that stuff I can read a decent amount of. I can definitely, like, it's easy to get through menus, understand basic story and stuff. And just functional Japanese, and that's what it is with the other stuff as well. So like with the Taiwanese games that are in, they're written in traditional Chinese in the games themselves, and that stuff is more just functional. Again, all the menus and stuff. I never hesitate to play through an RPG if I'm interested enough. I always play through an RPG, but sometimes I might need a walkthrough or something. And sure, a lot of the time you don't get the storyline, but that's fine, because a lot of them are very visual experiences, and even just looking at just fighting bosses and going through the thing and seeing what's happening, that's enough entertainment to make me interested enough to want to play them, even if it's with a guide for a foreign language RPG. And the gameplay as well, of course, it can always still be fun regardless of that. So that never stops me. Apart from the Japanese, German's probably the one I learnt the most, because it's much easier being much easier to pick up on words and sentences and stuff. So I learnt a decent amount of German just for the games that I was playing at any given time. I would learn up until that amount, and and it becomes quite easy to navigate those strategy games, those business sims. Like I play them. I learned to play them pretty quick. They're not too difficult.
I want to play them. No, I'm not gonna lie. I'm really interested in that kind of stuff as well.
Well, the lineage of the old German business games is still around today with the Anno series. It's sort of that kind of sprang out of the Settlers series and all these kind of logistical simulators that Germany got into making. So that's still very strong even today.
What is your favorite console or computer to play games on? Whether you're playing, emulated games, obviously right now, on it or not.
That's another one that's almost impossible to answer, but just because of the sheer variety of games, it has to be computers. I stream a lot of consoles. I've played every Super Nintendo and NES and Genesis game and all those other related systems, that all the games that have interested me, I've gone through all of them and stuff. But even with those systems, even with something like the NES or whatever, the Super Nintendo, even those libraries are very small compared to PC game libraries a lot of the time, because the PC is like an open market, just tons of stuff coming out. So ultimately, I've had more enjoyment in terms of all this game archaeology and playing weird stuff and finding exciting things with the PCs. And I honestly, I couldn't really pick one, but it'd be like DOS in general. And DOS alone doesn't mean much, because there's DOS from like the 80s and then DOS up until like 1997. It's very different hardware. Like the games are always scaled to whatever era they're from. But DOS, essentially, the Amiga is filled with... The interesting thing about the Amiga is there's zero Japanese games that were ever developed for it. It was all like American and then later mostly European. And there's just so much stuff. It's insane from all the European countries.
It was very popular back then, the Amiga.
Yeah. So the Amiga, DOS, and when it comes to the Japanese computers, the NEC computers, particularly the PC-98 series, which from, say, like 1989, late 80s to about mid 90s, those were the most popular computers for games in Japan. And the amount and the stuff on those is just particularly crazy, with how serious they took artwork and music and all those kind of things. Like very, very serious. The games are often a lot more serious and adult compared to the console games, so you get these very sort of high concept games a lot of the time, and it's just really fascinating to see a lot of it. So those computers I would have to go with. Not one particular.
Do you have any of those physically, like a physical version of those? I've
got like some old DOS stuff out the back here, which I haven't touched in God knows how many years. I don't know. I think the hard drives might be busted. I have to replace the hard drives on them. I've got a PC-88, a Japanese NEC computer, the PC-88, which is different from the PC-98. They're like different. They're different. One of them's like 8-bit. One of them is 16-bit, I believe. But I've got a PC-88. I've got like a Commodore 64, and I love the Commodore 64, but it's Commodore 64 is kind of like the Spectrum, the Amstrad, all these old 8-bit computers that have tens of thousands of games on them, but I do prefer the slightly more advanced era stuff, like from like 1993 or so, 1992, that era of stuff, mostly. Not that there wasn't Commodore 64 games coming out at that time, but in general.
I mean, to be fair, they were made in like 2 weeks, They were just releasing these.
Yeah. When you get into
a bucket
that
of new games, guys. I did this weekend.
when you get into that old stuff, especially the Spectrum, all those British things, a lot of the games are like budget games that were made very quickly. But you play the serious games, like an example on the Amiga would be Shadow of the Beast, which was a big hit at the time. For people that know it, obviously. And that's like a monstrous game with so much art, so much music, a full soundtrack, all that kind of thing. So this is again, because if it was a Super Nintendo, because being commissioned, not commissioned, but being on a system for Nintendo, it has to be up to some quality standard. Whereas a lot of those old computer games don't need any music, don't need any sound effects. Just throw something out there and put a budget price on it. It's good. It was so common, it seemed back then.
Yeah. So, since you've mentioned your kind of plan for YouTube, now our listeners probably know where I'm going with this, but it makes me think of TikTok, and I would 100% see you make short clips of your collection about one game, one very obscure game, and just talking about it, with your phone and just recording like a 30-second clip. And I think like it might actually be a good first step to start doing some of this, right? Because like creating a YouTube video it's a lot of production, you got to work a lot on it. And TikTok, that's the beauty of it, having your phone like this and just recording yourself talking about something, having the thing in your hand right there, it can be very simple, if you will. And especially with all the knowledge that you have, and I know from watching you online, well, on Twitch of course, and there's just obviously just talking to you today, and and I name Aerobiz, and you're like, yeah, it's Koei who did this, and like you're just a very knowledgeable guy. I think it'd be very easy, quote unquote, not that it wouldn't be done automatically.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Autonomously, you got to do it, but still, I could really envision you doing some TikToks. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with the platform, but any thoughts on that idea?
I could totally do that. I've thought about doing stuff like that. I've done similar stuff on Twitter, sort of. I've done little Twitter videos where I often put the camera on like some obscure Japanese Windows 98 game and something people don't know about, but it's interesting, and like I wanted to buy it for whatever reason. And I've done that quite a bit. Last year, I know I did a couple dozen of those videos on Twitter. Of course, Twitter's not the best platform for doing videos like that. So I could totally see myself doing something like that on TikTok. People would be interested in seeing little clips like that. Even on Instagram, I was messing around with doing some stuff like that with my silly pictures. But yeah, it's totally possible.
You can do reels on Instagram. Yeah. Because ultimately, like TikTok, ideas to help with discoverability, because Twitch is not great for this. So Twitter is not either. And I think like clearly you got something special going on. And I think that the whole kind of obscure, mysterious games that are, it's not something you wake up one day as a human being. I'm saying, you wake up one day, you're like, oh, I'm into obscure games now. You have to have someone like you
have to
or a
fall
friend
in with somehow. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly, right. So, and then going on Twitch and finding you online is certainly possible. But again, if that idea doesn't come to them first, of like, oh wait, there's actually like a kind of like niche retro, like obscure genre that I enjoy, like you're not gonna go be looking for this. But if you're on TikTok and you're scrolling and you stumble across your video, for example, and you're explaining like, or what these obscure games are, it's something that can get people interested, I think. So it'd be a great way to. I think it's a
very good idea. I could totally see myself doing something like that if I end up doing something like that more on TikTok rather than Instagram or Twitter. It could very well happen, because I've definitely messed with that kind of video before. Yeah. But
you can easily publish these videos on both TikTok and Instagram. You just do TikTok and then IG Reels, and that's same thing on both platforms. It's even better. You can just duplicate that content. It's no big deal.
It's definitely a good idea.
Cool. I'd be checking you out for sure.
I'll have to look into it. I might do it.
Yeah. We have a segment called "Explain This Post." All right.
Oh. Yeah.
And we got a couple of tweets here. I'm seeing the second one here. All right, let's start with the first. It's from May 18th. Imagine actually living as an adult in the 80s Japan and shit like this is coming out every 2 seconds for you to buy, man. And you're talking about Cyber City, the golden age of the cybernetics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That game was released. That's a game. That's a Japanese exclusive game, released in 1989 for the launch of the Fujitsu FM Towns computer. Exclusive to that computer, very provocative cover art that looks incredible. With
it looks good.
The game itself, for anyone that knows Afterburner, it's essentially an Afterburner clone with like a sci-fi theme. I haven't finished in a long time, but at some point it's like you go in a whole VR virtual reality thing and you fight like Cyber Jesus on a cross or something like that. From what I remember,
God.
A game from I think I'm remembering that correctly. It's from Telenet. Telenet made it, and terrible game. It's terrible. It's so hard. The gameplay is terrible, but it's such an interesting game. A lot of that stuff that even if the gameplay is quite bad, it still sticks in your head. You're like, that's such a cool game. It's such a cool game. But stuff like that was coming out so much in Japan back then. Just Japan alone, let alone all these other countries I've been talking about. Just Japan. You got a dozen plus computers or whatever at the time, which all have their own libraries of games. You got the handhelds, you got the consoles. It's like, where do you even start? Like, it's crazy. That was the economic bubble period in Japan, which was just insane. So that's what I'm referring to there.
If you could travel back in time in like Japan in the 80s, would you do it?
If I could, I would. I'd be able to get a lot
of... Stay there, by the way. You can't come back. All right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you did 1986 Japan. There you go. I'd go there.
Yeah. Another one. Okay, careful. We got not safe for work warning here.
Oh no.
From May 12th. If you missed the unboxing stream, all you need to know is that we got Fuckman.
No.
What is this game about? What is this game about?
So Fuckman is one of the... At that time, in about 1993, Japan... Well, the full story, if I could summarize this as quickly as possible, in the early 80s with computers, adult games were popular in Japan, the early 80s. And then they dropped off quite quickly, and they didn't come back full force until about 1992, the end of 1992, 1993, adult games, 18 plus sticker games in Japan, started coming back full force, and they started overtaking a lot of the PC game market at the time. And there was the main market, which was the NEC PC98, which I talked about before. A lot of them were coming out on, and that was a 16-bit color machine, or 16 colors on screen at once. So it was all anime visuals. Everything was anime. Illustrious artwork. They would always get the most professional artists to do the most incredible work on a lot of these games, whether they were adult games or non-adult games. The quality standard was sky high. At the same time as that, there was also the multimedia computers. So it started with the Macintosh, and then Windows 3.1 came along at around the same time. And these were like the higher... I guess they would have been higher price, more niche computers at the time. Basically the type of stuff that Myst was born out of, like that kind of computer graphics and 32-bit color, because they were 32-bit systems, the Macintosh and then Windows 3.1. So Fuckman is one of those games that came at that time in the 32-bit systems where the Japanese developers were like, instead of the anime games on the PC98, how about we get digitize photos and videos, like essentially just real porno, and shove them on these discs and charge huge prices for them because it was so early that it was still a novelty. And Fuckman is one of those games from a company called Kuki, which released a ton of these games. And it's just a very, very terrible, ghetto, just simple action game with a bunch of digitized like photos and stuff of adult stuff just on it, and it's hilarious. There's a lot. Did
you stream it on Twitch?
I haven't streamed it.
Could you? Because I mean, would you get, like, banned for?
You will get banned if you stream it full, just uncensored.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff. I have streamed the Japanese adult stuff censored before. Like a lot of the games where it essentially, a lot of the PC98 games, they'll essentially be full effort, just big elaborate RPGs or adventure games or something that just happen to have sex scenes in them, kind of like movies or whatever. It was a very common thing in Japan. But even if they did that, they would put an 18 plus sticker on it. So when I stream those games, I just censor those scenes out. I just censor them and then we just move on and they don't mean anything. With a button, I just have an overlay and it just blocks it, and that's it.
Okay. And you know they're coming, right?
Yeah, well, the games that I censor are games I've played before, and I'm like, this game's too cool. I need to stream it so people can see how cool this game is, so I censor it. With something like that, there's a lot less artistic value to it because they're so just stupid and silly, and they're just basically there for the photos and the videos. But there's definitely a gimmick, a charm. Like, they're hilarious. You can't stop laughing, but you definitely need to heavily censor them and just stream them a little bit. Just, you don't want to make Twitch mad. You just stream what's interesting from a historical standpoint, and that's it.
I mean, you know they're going to be looking. You know the you know the number one retro streamer with a title saying like, we're playing Fuckman. I mean, they're going to be on the lookout. With the ban button just beside them, you know, waiting for.
Anytime I stream something like that, there'll be zero nudity or anything. It'll just be whatever's interesting from a historical standpoint or an entertainment standpoint that's got no nudity or anything. I'll block all that out, and it should be okay. It has to have, the main thing with Twitch is the game has to be about, like, it has to show something that's not just about the adult stuff.
Of course. Now we have audience questions. And we have two. The first one is, since you play so many obscure games, I'm interested to know the answer to this one. What's the weirdest, strangest game you have ever played in your career?
Oh, I'd really have to think about that. There's some weird Polish games from some weird Polish games I've played. These games from there's a lot of weird licensed games. Like there's like an Italian exclusive game based on the Christopher Lambert movie called Nirvana, which I don't know how many people have seen that. I think it was only released in Italian with subtitles in other countries or something, but there's like a video game based on that from 1997 that no one knows about except for a couple of Italians. But it's Christopher Lambert live action FMV game that's available that you can play. It's just no one knows about it. So there's that. There's again, it's just, there's so many things running through my head. Like, it's just like behind me here, there's a Japanese Windows 95 gas station simulator. It's
interesting.
There's a Taiwanese RPG up here where you have to fight RoboCop. It's all over the place.
So we're thinking like all these new simulator games of, like, you know, Thief Simulator and whatever. You know, there's a bunch like Bee Simulator and all that. Like, but they were all done back in the 80s and 90s in Taiwan. That's it. Like, it was just...
a lot of these things, a lot of these ideas, you definitely see them pretty early. Like back here, there's a Japanese Pina. It's a Japanese bird simulator. You just like bird watching.
Wow. You bird watch. Yeah. You're not a bird. You're a bird watcher.
There's another one over here where it's like a mountain climbing RPG, Japanese, called Power Climb. There's a Japanese like government funded like water conservation SimCity 2000 clone called Riverty Town. That's amazing. It's everything's that's kind of what makes them so interesting. Just how interesting all these concepts are.
Most of the collection behind you.
Yeah.
Is the answer. The second question is, Macaw45, what are some of the late 2022 game releases you are looking forward to that I could add to my game wish list?
There's a bunch of stuff which I guess it might not necessarily be coming out in 2022, but in terms of sort of retro inspired stuff that's coming out in the coming months or potentially years, I think actually today there's supposed to be a Kickstarter starting for Black Jewel Reborn. Black Jewel Reborn is there's a game on Steam called Black Jewel, which is like a barbarian side-scroller inspired by this old Commodore 64 game called Storm Warrior, I think it was called. Basically just Conan, barbarian side-scroller, one of my favorite themes. Always need barbarian side-scrollers. Black Jewel is like a very cheap game that was made by an Italian comic book artist. And he's making like a new version of it that's going to be on the Mega Drive. It's going to be on the Super Nintendo, like physical versions. It's called Black Jewel Reborn. I'm very much looking forward to that. As soon as the Kickstarter starts, I'm going to be trying to back that. So there's that one for sure. There's I'm gonna get annoyed here because I might misquote some of these names. There's one coming out which I think has been in the works for a while, like a 2D Metroid-esque like ninja action thing. I want to say it's called Bushiden. Some people might know what I'm talking about. It might be Bushiden or Bushinen or something like that. That one, I've been looking forward to that for a long time. There's an Italian, it's the Italians with the barbarians. There's an Italian company called Crionsoft, which made a game called Age of Barbarian, and they've got a sequel coming out soon called Age of Barbarian, or Age of Barbarians, I think they've changed it to now. Age of Barbarians something. It's like a subtitle. It's the second one, and it's another barbarian side-scroller which uses pre-rendered graphics. And everything that Crionsoft makes, at Crian Soft, Crionsoft, everything they make I'm looking forward to. So there's that. And there was a really, really crazy one that I kind of forget the name of, and it's one that only was announced a few months ago, and this is going to drive me crazy that I don't remember the name of it. It looks absolutely stunning. I wish I knew the name. It's like a 2D ninja side screen. You're like a ninja, you're like a samurai, but it's got like a post-apocalyptic theme. Man, if only I could remember the name, but maybe I can get it up quickly here. But it's you play like a little samurai. It's got a post-apocalyptic theme, and it looks absolutely freaking amazing. Wait, I got the name here. I think I found it. Meifumado. There it is. Meifumado. Meifumado. That game looks astonishing. I don't know how many people have seen the trailer to that. That thing looks amazing. That's like the most amazing looking pixel art thing coming out. So that's another main one right there. Meifumado.
Very cool. That's 3 suggestions right there.
Yeah.
Well, nice. 3 for 1. Rapid fire questions are coming up. 15 questions.
Oh.
2 options per question.
Yeah, I'll try my hardest.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go. There we go. Mario or Pac-Man?
Mario.
Cranberry juice or caramel macchiato?
Caramel.
Potatoes or onions?
Potatoes.
Which number is bigger, 2 or 569?
2, definitely.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Pokemon?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Australians or Kiwis?
Australians!
The Ghostbusters or the Avengers?
Avengers.
American Airlines or United Airlines?
Let's go with United. I don't know.
Would you rather not change your underwear for a week or your socks for a month?
Socks for a month.
Pizzas or burgers?
Burgers.
Would you rather have your fans go through your photo gallery or your browser history?
They can go through my browser history. That's fine.
Have the best house in a bad neighborhood or the worst house in a good neighborhood?
Best house in the worst neighborhood.
Have to announce every time you fart or have all your farts be extremely loud?
Extremely loud.
Mullets or buzz cuts?
Mullets.
Is this the last question? Yes or no?
No.
Yes, it is.
Damn.
Amazing. I gotta love it. Every time I do these, I'm frankly I don't read them before our producer like creates them, and I have as much fun going through them as we all are, you know. So I love this segment. Macaw, the episode is coming to a close, sadly. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours. You're such a knowledgeable, such a knowledgeable, amazing guy. Really want to thank you for taking the hour to be with us and
thank
to
you
share.
very much for having me.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. And hopefully we can do this again in the future. Again, I'm sure we'll have, you know, so many other topics to discuss with you. And let us know if you started TikTok. We want to know for sure.
Look, you know, I might do it.
Well, I think you could get a lot of success as well there, from being such a knowledgeable guy. I invite all of you guys, if you haven't already, to check out Macaw45 on Twitch at twitch.tv/Macaw45. That's MACAW45. He's also on Twitter, Macaw45, YouTube, same Macaw45, and soon, very soon, on TikTok.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm gonna do that. It sounds like a good idea. I'm not even joking.
Michelle, do you want to say anything before we go? Any shout outs to anyone, anything you want to add?
Just thank you to Streamforge for contacting me whenever there's something that I forgot was coming out that you wanted to sponsor me for, and I was like, oh my god, that's out, that's incredible, I want to play that so much. Thank you for that. Thank you for letting me appear on this show. Just in general, just thank you for the support.
Well, thank
you to everyone, all my viewers and everything as well.
Yeah, thanks to all the listeners, to your community as well. I'm sure that are listening to this episode as well. We salute them, and we're looking forward to more content from you on Twitch, more obscure games, more Taiwanese mountain climbing RPGs, and
more boring German business simulations.
I'm actually really looking forward to catching your stream playing this, because I'm really interested in those games. Thanks again, Michelle, and again, guys, we'll be back next week. Every Tuesdays we're there with another episode of Streamforge Radio. Don't forget to tell your friends, check out the podcast, like, subscribe, leave a positive feedback. It's really appreciated. And again, see you next time for another episode of Streamforge Radio.